A polished risk register can look professional and still prove almost nothing. If I cannot see the scenario, the evidence you requested, the limits of that evidence, or why you changed your conclusion, I am mostly looking at formatting. A credible portfolio does not need a fictional client history. It needs work that is transparent, bounded, and inspectable. But it is neither client experience nor a hiring guarantee. In this video, I will show you one structure for building a strong, hypothetical GRC case study, then transfer the same method to two other project types. The goal is not to prove that you have already delivered for a client. It is to show how you define a problem, handle evidence and uncertainty, support a decision, and correct your own work.
I work in information security governance and GRC, but keep this channel anonymous and separate from client work. Judge the evidence, not anonymity. Narration and visuals are AI generated. Research, analysis, and final decisions are human. NIST's NICE framework describes cybersecurity work through task, knowledge, and skill statements. That gives us a useful starting point. Choose work that resembles a relevant task instead of trying to imitate a senior title. Formal work sample assessments are different. The United States Office of Personnel Management describes tests built around tasks identical or highly similar to the job, with care taken to mimic relevant work conditions and with trained assessors or measured outcomes. Your personal portfolio is not that. This kind of portfolio is self-selected and self-administered. It is not an employer-designed, administered, and scored assessment. It does not inherit the validity of a formal assessment. It does not verify authorship, prove live job performance, or guarantee that anyone will review it. What it can do is give an interviewer, mentor, or hiring team something concrete to question, and give you something concrete to defend, reproduce, and improve. Before you add another document, apply a simple failure test. Can another person tell which facts were supplied and which were assumed? Can they see what evidence you would need? Is your conclusion narrower than the evidence? Is the decision owner clear? Can they see what changed after review? If the answer is no, another polished template will not solve the problem. This is why a folder of copied policies, generic risk registers, and unexplained dashboards is weak evidence. The problem is not that the documents look good. The problem is that the reasoning is hidden. Use 5 parts. First, scenario and scope. Label the work honestly. Hypothetical case study, public source exercise, volunteer project, or authorized internal work. Define the organization, system, process, actors, assumptions, and boundaries. Second, criteria and evidence request. Name the public framework, policy objective, or control criterion. Then list the evidence you would request. Keep supplied evidence, assumed facts, and missing evidence separate. Third, analysis and limits. Show your method, sample, contradictions, and uncertainty. State what the evidence supports and what it does not support. Fourth, a decision artifact. That might be a bounded finding, a risk statement, a recommendation, an exception memo, or an escalation to a named decision owner. Fifth, a revision record. Keep the first version and the revised version. Explain what changed and why. If an experienced peer can challenge the work, use that review with consent. If not, perform a dated self-review against your stated criteria and say clearly that it is the weaker form of challenge. Here is a small hypothetical case. A fictional software company says user accounts for departing staff must be disabled within 24 hours of the recorded termination time. Your task is not to certify the whole identity program. It is to examine one narrow control objective using a supplied training scenario. Your evidence request might include the approved access policy, the population of leavers for 1 month, identity provider disablement logs, service tickets, and the names of the responsible roles. Now define the synthetic scenario data. The training pack contains 8 leaver records. 6 have matching disablement logs. One of those 6 was disabled after 31 hours. 2 records have no matching log in the supplied pack. Do not quietly fill the gaps. Mark all 8 records, 6 with matching logs, including 1 late result, and 2 without matching log evidence. For the method,
You examine the stated criterion and compare the termination timestamp with the disablement timestamp for the supplied sample. You are not performing a production audit, interviewing real staff, or testing the full population. A weak draft might say, "The offboarding control failed." That conclusion is too broad. A bounded finding might say, "Within the 8-record training sample, one of 6 records with matching logs exceeded the 24-hour criterion, while 2 records lacked sufficient evidence to determine timeliness." The sample supports follow-up on the observed delay and the missing evidence. It does not establish the effectiveness of the control across the full population. Then, give the decision owner useful options. Seek the missing logs for those 2 records. Identify why the observed delay occurred. Correct the logging process if needed, and expand testing before making a broader control conclusion. Your revision record should show why "the control failed" became a narrower statement. That change is part of the work. It shows that you noticed the boundary between an observed condition and an organization-wide conclusion. NIST SP 853A describes assessment methods such as examine, interview, and test, and connects assessment evidence and findings to risk-based decisions. Your project borrows that discipline. It does not claim comprehensive assurance or assessment authority. The same structure works for a current-to-target case. For this exercise, create a small fictional organization and choose a small subset, say 5 to 8 relevant outcomes, from the NIST cybersecurity framework. Explain why you selected them. For each outcome, separate current practices and available evidence from assumptions and gaps. Define a realistic target state, then present 2 or 3 treatment options with constraints and trade-offs. Finish with a 1-page decision memo. Name who would decide, what you recommend, and what remains uncertain. You are demonstrating risk translation, not pretending that you own the organization's risk acceptance. For a third-party case, make the evidence boundary the center of the project. Use a fictional software supplier and a narrow onboarding decision. Select only relevant questions from a public supplier risk source. Mark who must provide each answer: your fictional organization, the supplier, or another party. Keep unanswered questions as missing evidence. Do not invent reassuring supplier responses. Then recommend one bounded next step. Proceed conditionally, request specific evidence, or escalate to the named decision owner. The useful part is not a giant questionnaire. It is showing how missing external evidence changes the recommendation. Do not oversell any of this. A strong portfolio is still not client delivery. It cannot reproduce live stakeholders, incomplete organizational context, legal duties, production consequences, or accountability for a real recommendation. Real confidential work may be stronger evidence, but that does not make it safe to publish. Do not upload client names, internal findings, screenshots, vulnerabilities, proprietary templates, or invented, anonymized evidence that remains identifiable. Use authorized material, public sources, or clearly synthetic scenarios. And remember the hiring boundary. In an ISC² survey of 929 cybersecurity hiring managers across 6 countries, many respondents used skills-based assessments and prioritized problem-solving and analytical thinking. That does not mean they use portfolios, and it does not make this format universally effective. The portfolio gives you evidence for a conversation. It is not a shortcut around experience, assessment, or trust. Build in 3 passes. Pass 1. Map the work. Pick a target role, identify 2 or 3 relevant tasks, and choose one narrow scenario. Avoid executive decisions you would not own in the real role. Pass 2. Build the evidence trail. Write the scenario pack, criteria, evidence request, supplied facts, missing evidence, analysis, decision artifact, and limitations. Cite framework versions and public sources. Pass 3. Challenge the work. Ask whether your conclusion is broader than the evidence, whether another person could reproduce the method, and whether you could explain every line without hiding behind a template or an AI system. Record the errors and revisions. Add peer challenge when it is genuinely available. Do not manufacture it. Before publishing, ask 6 questions. Is the scenario labeled? Are facts, assumptions, and gaps separated? Are the criteria cited? Is the conclusion narrower than the evidence? Is the decision owner clear? Is the revision visible? If those answers are yes, you have a bounded work sample whose reasoning can be inspected and challenged. Do not pretend that a hypothetical company was a client. Do not pretend that a framework gave you authority. Do not pretend that a polished document proves competence. Show the scenario, show the evidence, show the gaps, show the decision boundary, show what you changed. That is how you build a credible GRC portfolio without inventing client experience. In the next episode, I will show you how to present one GRC portfolio case in an interview without overselling what it proves.